Hello, my name is Dr. Jim Del Prince, and I want to welcome you to my presentation that I put together to help you to maybe be a better competitor in floral design contests, as well as preparation for the PFDE. Now, if you don't know so much about those things, there is a handout that goes with this program, but mostly what I wanted to do was to put together a little bit of a get your feet wet program in preparing for membership for professional certification, as well as importantly, getting ready for floral design competitions. So if you are a professional florist and you want to seek more credibility and more recognition in the industry, you really should be looking at professional certifications, and you should be entering floral design competitions at the state level, at the regional level, national level, and international level. And to rise to those different occasions, it's going to take a lot of work. So I thought, how can I help you with something like that? And the way I'm going to do that is maybe just to familiarize you with a couple of techniques and talk about some of the things that I know that maybe will help you along the way. There is a handout that goes with this program, and if you don't have it, just shoot me an email at j.delprince@msstate.edu. That's j.delprince@msstate.edu, and I'll be happy to send it to you. If that all was too fast or you need that email address later, just Google me. I work for MSU Extension, that's Mississippi State University Extension, and I'd be happy to take your email and to shoot this brief handout over to you. So I want to start off with some housekeeping here. This session is not intended in any way to prepare you for the Professional Floral Designer Evaluation, the PFDE, which is part of the process to become a certified member of the American Institute of Floral Designers. Or it doesn't say that you're going to win or place in any floral design contest. And I make no claim that what I'm covering will aid you to gain in certification. It's just something to familiarize you and to help you to get your feet wet. Now, a couple things that I want to tell you about that I think will be helpful for you. There are scholarships available to professional florists to attend the AIFD National Symposium. These are provided not by the American Institute of Floral Designers itself, but by the AIFD Foundation. So it's a big difference there that you need to know about. The AIFD Foundation is the nonprofit funding arm of the American Institute of Floral Designers, and they operate as a separate entity. In the handout, there is a link to the AIFD Foundation, or you can just merely Google the AIFD Foundation. Now, these scholarships may have requirements, and one of the requirements might be that the recipient has never attended a national symposium before. And another requirement is that you cannot participate in any certification activity. So you can't get a scholarship to go to AIFD and to go through the certification process. It's much more involved than that. But like we say, anything that's easy, it's not worthwhile. That's why these steps really groom and comb people to make sure they're qualified for this high-level membership. It is something, though, to attain, and if you want more, you're going to go for it. Now, how did I get started with all of this? I've been an AIFD member for decades. I am a laureate member of the American Institute of Floral Designers, and I'm relatively active with AIFD itself, both at the Southern region and at the national level. This past year, earlier this year, in 2023, I attended a program that enabled people to prepare for competitions and for the professional floral designer evaluation. And I want to tell you all that it was a really great presentation. I'm glad that I was a part of it. It was taught by a woman by the name of Jeanne Ha, AIFD. She is the owner of Park Florist in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And she put together a fantastic publication. It's going to probably be, switched around for you. But this is what it looks like. It's called Ready, Set, Design. It was published in 2021 by Wildflower Media, and it is a terrific publication. I want to tell you a little bit more about this because it helped to inspire me to inspire you, and that's what we want to do, inspire people to do better in floral design, to gain more information. Jeanne's book is thorough, and importantly, it's systematic. It will help you to channel your energy into productive practice, because when you get ready for a competition or you want to prepare for certification, you kind of have a rough idea of what's going to happen, but Jeanne puts in some objectives to really help you through many years of experience. And it's a terrific publication. It involves, the process involves encouraging you to sketch your ideas into floral designs for specific categories, whether it's flowers for a table, flowers to wear, flowers to carry, sympathy, floral design, you get the idea. So these different categories of floral design oftentimes are part of contests, and you need to have some ideas, templates, and rubrics in place so that you can make informed decisions for your success. She also goes into explain how sample floral designs are scored and gives multiple project examples that you can practice that really make you feel like you're on the pathway to gaining success in contests and certifications. So with that, to succeed, you really must practice. You can't just feel like, oh, you know, I'm pretty good at professional level floral design. People have complimented my work, and I feel like I'm ready. It's a big investment of time and money to go to these presentations and to, you know, get ready for those certifications. Like I say, you can't just jump into it and say, I've got my tools, I've paid my fee, and I'm ready to go. You stand a chance to fail that way because there's a lot more that you need to know. So one of the things that you need to do is make sure that you have procured the proper tools. I've got here some floral design tools that I think are tried and true. Of course, wire cutters, pruners for woody stems, the multi-purpose shear that has a serrated blade. So these are great for cutting fine gauge wire, wired ribbon. They're also good for trimming leaves into shapes. It's something that I use, of course, every day. And of course, a cut flower knife. If you're not adept at using a knife, I encourage you to take a look at MSU Extension's publication, How to Cut Flowers with a Knife. If you want to access that free publication that has a great embedded video that will help you with the process, go to our website for Mississippi State University Extension, go to the Publications tab. Under the Publications tab, go to the section that says James Dell Prince as the author, and you'll see all of my publications. It's a quick way to find it because there are a lot of them there. Another really important tool for floral design contests and certification is a jewelry plier, a wire worker plier. You'll need this to use the decorative wires that are available, oftentimes in many different contests and certification programs. 2, you need to become adept at working with U-glue, whether it is the U-glue is offered on the roll or in tabs or in strips. And that is a product that you can find from your wholesale florist. Also working with waterproof tapes, such as the clear waterproof tape like I have here. And if you hadn't learned it before, when you open up this tape, there is a paper tab on it. But then you're going to cut that off when you use it. You always want to make sure that you fold a little bit of tape over top of itself so that you can always find the end for this. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's an important habit to get into in your floral design studio, in your flower shop, and that everybody in your flower shop uses that same technique. Otherwise, you waste time. Now, wasting time in a flower shop is one thing because time is money. But in a contest, you can't afford to waste a minute trying to find the end of the tab for your tape. So all of these things that you do are really important to go to the next step. That's why going into a competition after you practice is important, because you want to go in with the idea that you're going to go in, but also keep in mind that your chances of not winning are much, much, much greater than winning. But every one of those steps is a great learning experience. And it's awesome for you that you are putting that time and talent into gaining that experience. So hats off to you. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. I wanted to inspire you, but I wanted to cheer you on in some way. And I want to put this out there because I don't know who you are, but at least you can know who I am. And then we can share this energy. Okay, so on to the second page of my handout. I wanted to encourage you that when you practice, you need to gather plant material types and quantities like those offered in the session. So how would you know that? You know, at a state association meeting or at a regional meeting where there's a contest, you really won't know what they're going to give you. But they're probably not going to give you things that are ultra exotic. Now, I'm not talking about like bird of paradise or some anthurium. Those can be a part of the mix. But what you want to think about is where you are, who's planning the competition. You shouldn't know who the judges or the evaluators are. That should always remain blind to you. If you know who those people are, that's an unfair advantage. And it's not a good part of the peer review process. You want those to be blind. In addition to that, you want to know who the corporate sponsors are of the contest, because the corporate sponsors of the contest are probably going to donate many, if not all, of the products that are used, whether they're fresh flowers, fresh foliage, hard good products. So if you know who they are ahead of time and that's advertised, then that's public information, everyone knows it. Then that's the material that you need to practice with, because odds are you're going to see it at the competition and you will have an advantage to be able to say, I know how to work with these items. In the workshop that you're taking, I should say, in the contest that you're participating in or in the evaluation, you must only employ well-practiced techniques. Okay, so in a contest or in a certification process, this is not the time to practice something new. And it's certainly not the time for you to put it together and then present it. Number one, it's not going to look good because you've not refined it yet. Number two, in your eyes, it might look great. But then after the evaluation process, the evaluators, the judges may or may not point out to you how it didn't work. And the sad thing is you won't have that practice behind you except that one time when it didn't work for you. So floral design is based upon design principles using design elements. You have to be adept. You have to master the design principles before you can start to employ many techniques. And techniques that are well represented and masterfully conducted in a floral design will separate your work from the others. That right there in a nutshell is the theory behind what I want to present to you now. You must be a master of the floral design principles, using the elements of floral design in order to put them together, employing specialized techniques by the sponsors of the competition, using their products in beautiful ways so that your work will stand out. It will score highly, consistently in different categories and get you the results that you want. What are the results that you want? Well, a certification, you want to be certified, right? That's either a yes, no kind of thing. So you want that certification because you're putting a lot of time, money, and effort into it. In a floral design competition, you want recognition. So in a floral design competition, just being in that contest gets you recognition because people will see your work. They'll see you standing near it. Hopefully at a competition afterward, if you find out who the judges are, ask them on a very professional way, would you be able to give me a few minutes of your time to give me a professional level critique of my work? Bam. That's recognition right there from an influential person in your state, in your region, or nationally in the floral industry to say, I spoke with that person. They really showed a need and a want, a desire to learn. That goes a long way because it proves you're ready to learn. The people who are in a floral design competition or other session that feel like, oh, they just don't know what's good. My work is really good. They're peacocks. And a peacock is only worth the feathers that it sheds. So that being said, go in willing to learn, ready to learn, and continue the learning process as you go on and on and on throughout these steps. Okay, are you motivated to learn? Let's rock and roll here with a little approach here to some things I prepared for you. This first floral design reflects a development of a parallel floral arrangement. And there are some things that I want to point out to you in this as we roll. When you create a floral arrangement such as this, you want initial impact. You want the evaluator or the judge to see your work and to say, whoa, overall, this looks pretty good. You want to put them in a good mood, in a good spirit, and let them try hard to find areas where you need improvement in the arrangement. So initial impact is difficult to master, but you want that initial impact. And one way that you can do that is through color. Now, in some floral design competitions, you have choice over color, but a lot of times you don't get tons of flowers. The color is almost really pre-selected for you. So you can still use that in masterful ways, and we'll talk about that. You want to exemplify design principles. You want to look at the container and the mechanics and the placement by placement series here, and then look at floral techniques. So let me get a little closer to this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. In this arrangement, I use a floral container that is manufactured by Smithers Oasis because they typically sponsor a lot of high-level floral design competitions as well as PFDE. They're not always the only sponsor, but they are, as we all know, leaders in the American, if not worldwide, floral industry in terms of hard good manufacturing and sales to wholesale florists. So it makes good sense that you would get their product. I developed this floral design by adding a fresh flower foam, which is, of course, another Smithers Oasis product, into the arrangement. But instead of using an entire brick, I sculpted it. So this container is designed to hold an entire brick of fresh floral foam. But as you can see, if I added an entire brick, that's a lot of mechanics. It's a lot of material. And the amount of floral material I want to use in the arrangement to make this clear, clean, and have that initial impact is minimal. Your objective in floral design competitions is to gravitate away from mass patterned work because it's difficult to score because there's so much going on. And the trend these days is to develop an objective where you design with flowers in a way that you're using either parallelism or formal linear work. And if you don't know about those things, you've got studying to do. Okay, so I've taken my brick of fresh floral foam in its dry state or in its wet state where it's hydrated, didn't matter. I took a big knife to it, a foam cutting knife or a large knife, if that's allowed in your toolkit, to make a nice clean cut. And then I keep that floral foam aside to maybe reuse in a different way. And I give myself now a palette that's more sculpted. Now, how did I base this? Aspidistra leaves, quick, clean, easy to work with. If there's aspidistra foliage in your mix, you're golden, at least for me, because I've studied it and worked with it so much. And of course, in the southeastern United States, we can grow this plant material, so it's abundant for us. So you have to think about that. Will that be part of the mix? And you might want to learn some leaf work techniques, not might, you need to learn leaf work techniques. So that's a whole different category if you're taking notes during this little video. All right, what I did was I put those down over top of the hydrated fresh floral foam after I taped it in place. And let me show you real quickly here. You can see how there are two parallel bands of tape that holds this down. And I went all the way around the container, so then it became extremely important for me to cover up that container, allowing one of the leaves to overlap. The leaves are going in two different directions, and when the arrangement was finished, I sculpted them with my scissors to give them a clean kind of that banana leaf look. And now my mechanics are covered and they're clean. Very quick application there that I learned somewhere down the line. I don't know by whom, but they probably learned it from someone else. Next comes development of the upright lines of parallelism. I think this design could potentially score in the upper range because it's clean and it's clear as far as what I was doing. Starting with the mechanics, I developed my lines initially with just 2 stems of healthy snapdragons. Where I think I could potentially have some improvement is cleaner lines here with some of the foliage of the snapdragon. The retail florist side of me wants to leave as much foliage and as little wounding as possible in cleaning my flowers. But the competitive side is a different kind of bird. It's a different kind of floral designer. And in competition, this could be a hindrance, especially if you were given plant material with some foliage healthy and some foliage not healthy. A judge or an evaluator may look at that aspect. I didn't think it was a big problem, but it could cost me some points. So it's a decision I had to make as I was rolling, and I importantly wanted to point it out to you. I scheduled, or I placed these snapdragons into the design so they overlapped on the diagonal so that you could see both of them very clearly. Maximum impact, minimum amount of plant material always goes the distance for you. Less is more, economy of means scores highly, or it gets you attention from an evaluator. It may not be an objective in the competition, but it's going to get your work noticed. And they're going to say, this person is using every flower to its maximum potential. Next up, I scheduled or placed another system, planning a void within the center. So parallelism, using one block of foam or its equivalent, gives you the room for about 2 systems, right? 2 solid systems with empty space in the middle. You can create parallelism with multiple lines, but the more plant material you use, the more trouble you're going to get into. So sometimes less is more to express that. And this is an objective that I like to share. I created a system here using some of the white wax flower and then a supportive system that I think is stronger with the miniature carnations. The closer to the focal area and to the base of the design, where the focal point or focal area of the design is included, the closer the spacing. So I used rhythm and the aspects of rhythm very strongly. Then I reinforced this with a kind of another plant material using the foxtail fern and the technique of removal. So removal is when you take a plant material and you remove some of the foliage that's part of it. In competitive floral design, this gets you some points and it gets you some notice. And a nice thing too is it doesn't crowd that focal area. So many times in competitive designs and in some of the certification programs where I have previewed or I've reviewed, viewed some of the floral designs that were made in that session when it's open to the public, I notice a lot of crowding can be a problem. So typically, the biggest problem for professional floral designers when they go for certification or for contests is shoddy mechanics. The mechanics that are non-decorative or showing, or they're unstable. Right there, it's out. It's out. You're going to go to the bottom of the heap, and I'm going to go to the other floral designers that are stronger with well-created, well-crafted sound mechanics, number one. And then number two, I'm going to start to look for design principles. And once I see good design principles, then I'm going to start to look for technique. Boom. Those are 3 main objectives for you to keep in mind. Where do you fall in that series? Good sound, clean mechanics, number one, basis. Number two, design principles. very strong have to be in that category for that arrangement. And part 3, then well represented, well maintained, well created techniques. Now, let's go then to the bottom of this design then that start to become the third area of my work. This is one strong stem of spray chrysanthemums, and I wanted to guide the eye throughout the arrangement. So you can see in this design, it becomes a little walkway. I learned how to master this through help of working with my students and teaching over the years. I remove all the pedicels from the peduncle. If you don't know what that is, you need to become a professional florist certified designer with MSU Extension or a master floral designer. Look into our programs on our Mississippi State University Extension website. It's underneath Lawn and Garden tab, floral design, and you'll learn all about my programs. So as I removed all of those side buds, side flowers, I graded them according to size. So when I created this little pathway, the smaller buds established the depth of the design from side to side, and then zigzag placements, creating a little pathway so that as you get to the stronger, bolder portion of this design, that's where the larger flowers go, not the opposite, right? So small to large, impact, focal impact, let that eye hit here first, glide along the lines of the arrangement, but come back to this resting area. It may not get you a blue ribbon, but it might get you a red ribbon or a 3rd place, or it might get you an honorable mention. I would rather score 6th in a competition than 30th. You see what I'm saying? Because people are going to come along and they're going to say, like, this is where maybe you need improvement, but this is nice. And you learn a lot. Our friend, Frankie Shelton, queen of the floral industry in the United States of America, says, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. So if you know everything, the only way to go is down. Stay green. The next thing I wanted to do was to use some of the standard carnations at the focal area of the design. Now, downside here is that blackish red, that maroon color is a receding color in many ways. It doesn't have the impact of the white, which is going on here and here and here, or the red. But I got to work with what I have. And if I tried to use all of these miniature carnations just for focal impact at the base, I'd have to use a lot of them, and the amount of plant material you're going to get is going to be quite limited. As I place these into the design, I only had 3 to use. I used 1 in the back, 1 in the front, and then 1 in the center, so I can get that mound shape that becomes more rhythmic. And again, because it's parallelism, technically all materials need to be parallel spaced, and they also need to be looking up at the ceiling no matter where they are in the design. I took some of the bright red and I used it with these placements of hypericum. So the hypericum sort of peeks through the red, and that also helps me to create a sense of unity throughout the design. So the red isn't a foreign object. Same thing with the white. The white really helps with focal impact here. And it gives me an opportunity to use so much placement technique, but it's not the only white in the arrangement. There's some up here too. And, I kind of think this maybe is good. It might get me some points. My difficult area was my aspidistra leaves weren't quite long enough, and I had some floral foam showing here. So I'm a student of the 1980s in floristry. That's where I really did a lot of my competing work. And I like to use a lot of moss. So I pretended that the judges gave me some moss, which they may, or the organizers would give you some moss in the category. But this could also be something like mink fern, or it could be green trick, something that was just enough to provide a little bit of cover to that non-decorative mechanic, and never use just one of something, because it does not provide you with the unity throughout the arrangement. You need to replicate something. So not just one liatris, but 2 or 3 or 4, right? Not just one item. So I repeated that with just a little postage stamp sized amount of the Spanish moss here, following that line. I could add another tuft of it over here, but be careful when you use these items. You want to use them with great economy, and you want to make sure that you use just enough to take care of the job, but to make it harmonize without the arrangement. So that's my example of my parallel design that I wanted to share with you. Let's go on now to the next floral arrangement. And this is an arrangement in a category that we might refer to as a tabletop arrangement. And this design uses the technique of formalinear design. Formalinear, form and line. What is formalinear? The European schools almost always define formalinear floral design with the phrase a ballet of lines. And, you know, I think that we really need much more interpretations and much more discussion about that. But it gets us started with it. What is a ballet of lines? Well, a ballet seems to denote movement, but also dynamic movement. It's not parallelism anymore necessarily. It means that there are curves, and with the term ballet, curves and turns and glides, but also line, right? So we're not creating or using a lot of material and moving into the old-fashioned mass category that we love, particularly in the southeastern region. Professional florists, master floral designers, a lot of the arranging work that we do is mass patterned because we feel that that's traditional and beautiful, it's opulent, but it doesn't get you a good score in a contest or in an evaluation. So let me take this from the start and show you what I did. I selected this container because it's a Smithers Oasis product, and the mechanic for the design is Oasis Midnight in the cube form. I also selected it because it is, like I say, a Smithers Oasis product. Now, the Midnight foam is a floral design mechanic that's meant to be revealed and not concealed, revealed and not concealed. So having that, I knew I wanted the mechanic to be shown in the design. You will get knocked down in a floral design competition if you take a mechanic that's meant to be revealed or shown and you cover it up. So any of the new mechanics that are on the market now that are sustainable, such as the rock wool product, if you got something like that, which is not very likely, but possible, and the coconut core product, you want those materials to be seen. So again, less is more, economy of means. Now, in a competition, you may have access to pan melt glue. If you do, you would take your floral design foam in its dry state, glue it into the container, and then soak the unit. But in PFDE, it might be difficult to have a hot glue station. I don't know. It's dependent on so many other things. So you can't always count on that being there necessarily, especially in a contest. So what I did was I used waterproof tape that came over top of the foam. And I don't think I have any water in this, so I can show you what I did here. There's a little tab of it right there, and that goes all the way across and then over to this side. So it cuts across a third of the arrangement, just enough to hold it in place. And as you can see here, I'm going to do my best here to show this to you online. I added a little bit of an extra tab of tape over top of that and then back into the container to help this to hold all of this foam in place. Now, in a category like this, it's highly unlikely that a judge is going to pick up your arrangement and shake it. That could happen at the state level because they're thinking about delivery vehicles, but at a regional level, not so much. A national level, probably not so much. Just something that holds together. The big thing here is making sure that it stays stable for stable mechanics, but beauty and economy of means. All right. So the next thing I wanted to do was to develop this so that it had some curved lines. similar to what I did before in the parallel arrangement, but in this arrangement, bringing my line flowers up in one solid system, if you will, and then echoing it on the other side with the Italian ruscus using removal. So I found the sides of the ruscus that were clean and the curve. And if anything got too far into this open section, clip, 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 ballet of lines, smooth lines like a ballet superstar creating with his or her hands asymmetry. You can think about it that way. Then the next step was to tailor some materials. So this is a monstera leaf, and just like what I did before with the foxtail fern, I tailored the monstera leaves so that they would make a nice clean placement. Now, something I want to tell you about working with foams like Midnight and urethane foams that are colorful, there's not a lot of room for inaccuracy. You can't put something in and then pull it out and put it somewhere else. Because if you're revealing a lot of foam and you make lots of holes in it, that's an error. You're not using the product properly. This product was designed and is being sold and marketed with the idea that it takes less plant material to get a beautiful look, which is one of the reasons why I think it, in my view, would be a really good floral design mechanic to use in a contest. But I don't know. I don't know about that. You know, we're always guessing. So I took a couple of roses and I used them in the arrangement like this, and then used some of the hypericum below that. And I ran a line of standard carnations, dark color, then the darkness goes a little bit deeper. My flair with my wire work was to take some of the snakeskin wider wire, and with my jewelry pliers, gave that a nice tight clean curl, and 2 placements of it repeated. So I think in the video, it doesn't show as well, it doesn't do as well. This arrangement to me looks so much better in real life than it does on the screen. But at least from this, we can learn a couple of techniques. Okay, so that gave me a little bit of something to talk about. I did leave my floral foam showing as much as possible. And then where my placements were of the waterproof tape, I made sure I took the little clippings of the Italian ruscus leaves and I brought them out to cover up those little bits of tape. Less is more. Impact area, working forward, may not be a blue ribbon, may not be a 5 out of 5, but it might be a 4 out of 5. And you know, in various scoring methods for competitions or evaluations, you need consistency. You need those higher scores to carry you along so that you get what you need out of the program. Okay, so now let's maybe kind of take a practical view of designing with flowers and maybe making something here. I've got a little setup here where I put some materials together, and I've got a Smithers Oasis container, yet another one here. And I like this one because of the fact that the fresh flower foam wedges beautifully into the container. In this category, each participant may have been given 1/3 of a brick of fresh floral foam. That doesn't mean you need to use that. You can always take a little bit of that away. So that's what I'm going to do with my design work. Just take a little bit of that away and give it a nice clean finish as best as I can using my floral knife. I'm going to build this design in an asymmetric manner. My objective in this arrangement is to build an asymmetric floral design. So as I'm starting with my arrangement and I see my mechanics, I'm thinking to myself, I know I can make something relatively distinctive in asymmetry. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and bevel the sides of the floral foam. This will enable me to cover the mechanics more easily. And I think the nice thing about doing this is you don't charge right into stem placements. That's a no-no. Give yourself a little bit of time. If you've practiced and you have some objectives in mind and some techniques that you want to employ, you're going to be in really good shape because you refined everything. Now, one of the things that I like about this container is you don't necessarily have to tape it in or glue it in. You can, and a evaluator may be looking for that. But because the container was made to fit the floral foam this way, and there are little spikes, I have water in here, but there are little spikes down in the base of the container, the mechanic stays put relatively beautifully. So I want to use that to develop it. Okay, now, because I said I wanted to make an asymmetric floral arrangement, I'm going to make the heavier focal area on this side of the container and then bring the flow of the design off to my left, which may be your right. But you'll notice too, my placement of floral foam in the container is also asymmetric. Let's get started. In my mixture of things, I put together a bucket similar to what you might get in a floral design competition. You get some line material, some mass material, some filler material, and a couple of different foliages. You might also get an assortment of wire products, and you might get some Middlino sticks, all of the stuff that Smithers Oasis and other popular manufacturers will make. So knowing that, I know I'm going to, because I've got some aspidistra leaves here, I may very well want to employ some leaf work with these. These are wonderful for that. Also, again, because I could pick out the stuff that I wanted and I grow some of this, I have the foxtail fern. I want to show you some techniques of manipulating some of the aspidistra foliage. This is from a publication that we're working on. And this one is where I took the aspidistra leaf and I just cut notches out of it. So it's a really cool decorative product. And as you can see, we're talking about a ballet of lines. It does have a beautiful curve to it that could help you to, create an archway over a placement. So for some sheltering or an upright curved line. But this is much more dynamic than just using the plain leaf. In this second one, I nipped off the terminal to make it look more like a banana leaf. So let's say, for instance, you wanted a technique that looked more tropical. This suggests maybe a banana leaf. And you can imagine how cool this would be if you could apply color to it. Typically, though, in a contest, you don't get into a lot of spray painting because that takes time and they have to have a separate place for it. This is a technique that you should know how to do. This is where we take an aspidistra leaf, we turn it upside down, taking up your multi-purpose shears, you snip the backbone of the leaf, and then you tear it. So this then enables you to create a really unique placement. You see what I did with that? Don't tear it all the way, but you can make a really cool placement where this maybe goes over top of flowers in an arrangement, or you manipulate it this way so it shows some tension. Again, a couple of leaves could really set your work apart in a floral competition. And then, of course, last but not least, taking the aspidistra leaf, curling it over, bringing it through, and look at that, you've got this cool little presentation. This could be something that fills in a gap, but don't always think about filling in a gap so much as making a real statement with something, because this could be cool as an initial placement on top of floral foam and then working plant materials out of that pierce point. So you've got something that covers the mechanics or maybe provides a cool way to base arrangement. Lots of ideas there, and there are a zillion more for you to master. And they're great for you to use in your everyday work too, because customers want something different. So in building my design, I'm going to start off by selecting a couple of snapdragons to build the line. And I'm going to clean them. So I'm going to do a good bit of removal. I'm going to drop all of the plant material, I should say the foliage, down into my compost bin, because this is going to go back into the compost, but I'm going to build a cleaner line. So maybe I learned something from my first design where someone said, hey, maybe clean your foliage off of your cut flowers a tad more so that you give an evaluator less to worry about. So I've got 2 clean snapdragons to employ in this arrangement, and I'm going to place them into the design first. Okay, so a good way to measure proportion, of course, is to make my design maybe 2 times the length of the container. So here's the length, and then here's 2. So I know I can make a proportionate arrangement twice the length of the container just by that quick measurement. And if you've never learned that before, that is, of course, an important technique in floral design that's ages old, especially in Ikebana. Another thing that I want to tell you about is when you create a floral arrangement such as this, we use what we refer to as the Mississippi State University screwdriver cut, where you take your knife and you cut the flower stem on one side, turn the flower stem on the other side. So you cut it like a flathead screwdriver. You can see what that looks like. That means that plant material wedges into the foam and stays put. I'm going to make this so that the arrangement is appropriate as a table centerpiece, but it's an asymmetric one, which is something that, you know, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think about. They might think of a table centerpiece as being quite symmetrical. Now, my next placement of snapdragons is full of flowers. So I'm going to use that to my best advantage. I've got some senescence occurring on these lower florets. So I'm going to remove those before they go into the design. I do have some control over that, and it's something an evaluator might be looking for. Did you remove damaged portions of the plant material? And there's another floret that just wanted to volunteer to leave, and I'm going to let it do that. Same thing again, Mississippi State University screwdriver cut goes into the floral mechanic just like this, and I'm bringing it not on the same line as where I started, but stair-stepped upward to the left. So I'm going to maximize the amount of space between them, but still keep it as a nice, sharp, clean line. Okay, my goodness, what in the heck am I going to do next? I think next up, I need to focus somewhat on creating placements of plant material that are well hidden. And I don't want to have to use a lot of foliage for this. So I'm going to go back and use that technique of allowing the aspidistra leaf to cover up a good bit of the material. And I can do that by taking this leaf and bending it so that the top is showing, and I'll place that right into the floral foam like this. And then I know my other placements will help to hold it in place. I could use a little wire, but I know I'm going to place flowers here anyway, so I'll let those placements hold it down so you don't see a lot of non-decorative mechanics like wire hairpins. I have before taken the petiole, which is a nice lignified petiole, and I've used it for placements into the leaf, and that helps to hold it in place. But no one told me I can't have an assistant using a little pair of pliers here, so I'm going to move on from there. All right, next up, I'm going to do the same thing with another aspidistra leaf, and to keep my floral arrangement clean, I'm going to go that route. So I'm going to cover up a good bit of my foam right from the start. And, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I'm not done yet, but by the same token, I've got plenty of my non-decorative mechanic already covered, and I'll add some other materials to this to get the party started. I really like the way that the white brought a lot of attention to the focal area. So I'm going to employ my technique here of creating that grouping of the spray chrysanthemums, removing the pedicels from the peduncle, and then I will put the peduncle into the bin, so it will be recycled, go into making good material to grow other plants and flowers. Next up, I'm going to start in with these smaller placements of the spray chrysanthemums, and I'm going to create a nice solid grouping that brings a lot of attention and coverage to this left-hand side of the design. You can see the flowers are going to cover up a lot of the mechanic now. So I don't need to necessarily green it in. You don't have to go that route. Triangulation of placement with some of the smallest buds enables me to use my plant materials to their best advantage. And that white is going to bring a lot of attention now to this side of the arrangement. So I'm going to have to take care that I distribute my materials, especially my distribute my materials so that the visual weight of the design is pitched in just the right areas. When you make an asymmetric arrangement, you don't want everything to necessarily fall directly on one side. It needs to be somewhere between in this arrangement, the left and center. So I'm bringing a diagonal line of the white flowers throughout the arrangement. And I'm going to continue this throughout. So let me just use this other placement of the spray chrysanthemums. And then I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I drive it through those aspidistra leaves to make an opening to get into the floral foam. And I've got a little something like this. Okay, I've got two of the largest spray chrysanthemums left, but I'm thinking, okay, I've already defining now my balance. I'm going to save these materials back and keep them in a nice, tidy pile, including that little petiole from the aspidistra, just in the event that I need it. But I know these long stems, I need to get rid of them because they're going to take up a lot of room. Okay, fun stuff. What else do we have here? So I can continue to build the line of the design. I could use the foxtail fern for this, and I could keep it intact. I can also do some removal with it. I can do the same thing with the Italian ruscus, and I could do the same thing with leatherleaf fern. So that being said, I think I'm going to reserve, I think I'm going to show you how that's done. Old time technique that we've seen in floral design competitions for a long, long time. I'm going to do some removal here with the leatherleaf fern to create some little spears, but I'm not going to discard these leaflets. I keep them. Another important thing is that you use your multi-purpose shears for this purpose, because as you get closer to the terminal of the leaf, these leaflets get weaker and weaker. And if you're just doing it with your hand, you may potentially bust the beautiful terminal that you're trying to establish. But y'all, look at that. It's got a nice curve to it, so this can develop upright lines, horizontal lines, ballet of lines right here because you've got a nice curve. I'll repeat that process with another placement of the leather leaf, keeping all my leaflets, because a lot of times you're in a floral design competition with multiple categories, and you never know, you might want some of this other material for a flowers to carry design, a sympathy design, you name it. Now, that second placement, that second leaf is much more petite than the first. So even though its stem is shorter, it may be the longer of the two placements in the arrangement. But look at that. It's a lot more delicate now. So I think I've got something there that I can really use. I'm going to put my extra leather leaf placements to the side. And then I'm going to create these placements, echoing what's going on with the snapdragon. I noticed the snapdragon has a little floret there that dropped, probably because it was the floret was fertilized. I'm going to drop this into the arrangement like this, just kind of hovering over top of the first two, and then repeat that with this second placement, something like this. I just want to extend that line. A little something. Now I'm ready to get into some other material here. I think I'm going to use a couple of roses for the focal area to help to emphasize what's going on there. And I'm going to layer these right on top of the white flowers so they really stand out. Use about 3 of these, removing any of the petals. You really should do that before it goes into the design, because the petals that you remove that are damaged may change the visual weight of the flower itself. So I want to take care to do something like that. Placement number 2, stair step downward to the left, and then let's bring another kind of bold placement upward. MSU screwdriver cut, it's going to stay put. I want to practice this and practice this design so that I know what I'm doing and can make quick decisions. Now, that's a lot of red and a lot of white against this soft pink. So I'm going to have to make sure that I do something to help to blend these materials together. And I could do that with some of the miniature carnations in red, carrying that color through. If I didn't have these, I could just take another rose and bring it out into the longer section of the design. Just establish a little bit of line flow here. Pull into the aspidistra leaf. Another one right about there. Something like that. So I'm bringing some of that bright red into the pink section. Unity. Next up, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to use some of this leatherleaf fern on the opposite side. But by doing that, it's almost like it's too much unity. And these aren't special anymore. And I'm still not really quite sure about this placement. Like I might want it to be a little bit higher. I think I like it there. All right, then next up, my plan was to take the foxtail fern. In addition to it being really good as a line material, whether it is intact or stripped, it also can be really good as a filler because it's nice and bunchy. So I could always use this down below to hide some of the floral foam. But NDY, not done yet. I don't want to do all that basing just yet. I want to get into another technique. So I think what I'd like to do is add more rhythm to this design. And because the Italian ruscus is nice and rhythmic, I can always take it and do some removal just to keep it nice and clean. I'll clip off all of these leaflets to make sure that I've got a clean looking stem. And then I can always take this and bring it over. So a couple things with this, MSU screwdriver cut, but then I can always just take some of the waterproof tape and that additional stem, one of the stems that I saved from before, which will help with this, or wood pick, which would be great, but give this a little bit of extra reinforcement. I don't want this stem to fly out. So I'm going to just take this and some of the waterproof tape, and then I'll wrap it together like this, just to make that placement a little stronger. And then I'm going to use this in my design bent over the top. So just like the aspidistra leaves, this is going to add more rhythm to the arrangement. I'll bring it over the top, and then I'll use some bullion wire to help to hold this in place to something that's relatively stable, which is not a lot in this arrangement. Everything is very soft. So if I could work it through the network of these snapdragons, that might do the trick, okay? So a little bit of the bullion that was pre-done. I know that if I see bullion, I'm probably going to use it for a couple of different techniques that I've learned along the way from different designers, number one, and number two, practice them. So I've taken this, and that's what's going to bind it. It's pre-cut, and I made those little fuzzy nests. I could always take the bullion then and smash it down in place very, very carefully. I don't want to smash the plant materials or the flowers, but you can see now what that's done to the arrangement. A little bit of removal, less is more here. Clean that up little by little by little. I think that that's more like it. Less is more there. Some nice clean lines. I want to be able to see the main stem of the Italian ruscus. So that's one way of doing it. Now I'm ready to go through, and I want to wind our video down in about an hour here, and we're to that point. So I'm going to just take and add some of the small pieces of the foxtail fern that I've trimmed already, removing any of the dead foliage, anything that might look bad. Just a couple placements of that really hid that foam quite beautifully, and it kept the integrity of the rest of the line together. Next thing I'm going to do is concentrate on bringing a little bit more bright red into the arrangement, but that covered up most of the foam. Get a little bit more there, just a touch more, so we don't see the non-decorative phenolic floral foam. Nice and tight, let that leaf overlap it. There, we could kind of live with that. And then we were also given some hypericum berries. I'm going to add just a few placements of hypericum to this design, tearing those two off from the main stem because I want to be frugal and keep everything that I think I need in case there is another category. And then I can add these into the arrangement following the flow of the design, cascading a little bit more red into the far right. And now those large, very showy roses, the red color has some continuity throughout the rest of the arrangement. And of course, if I wanted to, I think I do, let's go ahead and add this one, doing some removal. I think I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice that little cluster there. So it's really super thin, very small amount of hypericum, and we can extend the line just a tad further. MSU screwdriver cut right into that floral foam. Let's see if we need it. So our little spears are there for our technique. And just like in our other design, I might add a little bit of wire work, especially since I've got that little touch of silver there. I can always add a decorative piece of silver closer to the focal area that's maybe a little bit larger. Just take the material and wad it up. And this can be just a little tuck in to help to emphasize the focal area, just like what we did with our nest material. I would probably pin that in place. I would want to make sure that it wouldn't fall out. A little asymmetric table arrangement there for you. But some of the different techniques. Okay, so let's kind of get back here to what we were talking about before. I hope that you got some motivation to get on the ball, because you can't just enter a floral design competition feeling like I design flowers and my customers love what I do. You have to go into it with a different mindset, and you have to go into it with the idea that it's a constant learning experience. But the great thing about it is you're going to learn from the other competitors, so respect them, don't be a hater, respect them and learn from them. And look at the entire experience from the standpoint that there is so much to learn. And if you don't win, that's great. The only way is up. And it's better to be green and growing than ripe and rotting. Okay, again, j.delprince@msstate.edu if you want the handout for this. But I hope you learned something new and helpful. And I hope you gain great success in the future. Thanks so much.